75. And you want to be really careful with this pile of goop because the first few could go flying all over the kitchen. I'm going to do about 100 French folds, a 5-minute rest, and another 100 French folds, and then the bulk ferment will begin. So let's start very slowly. I'm not going to walk you through as last time how I did them. I'm just going to do them. You can see in a matter of 10 French folds how the dough is already starting to develop, and I'll do another 20. We'll cut away and I'll come back toward the very end. Here we are in the last 20 French folds, and you can see how the dough is now smoothed over. It has a really nice billowy feel, a little bit sticky, but white flour for 73% hydration. This dough feels great. So we're just going to finish it up with another 10 French folds. And then go into bulk ferment. And at the 30, 60, and 90 minute mark, we're going to do 3 letter folds. That's it. Take the dough, stretch it out. It's incredibly extensible. So another thing I want to mention is I've never worked with this dough before, so it's like the proverbial box of chocolates from Forrest Gump. I have no idea what I'm getting into because I've never done it before. I'm going to do it again, fold it out again, and one last time. That's it. That's the first letter fold. It'll be 2 more, one at 60 minutes and one at 90, and then a 15-minute rest before it goes into retard overnight. So that's it. Turn the dough over. It looks and it feels really great. And smooth. That's 1. 2. Let it droop down. Get that stretch of the gluten. And I think this one I probably could roll 1 more time. So there you go. You can see it's already starting to rise. That's after 2. There's 1 more to go, and then a 15-minute rest before it goes into retard. And we'll be back in 30. Last fold. Here we go. I want to stretch that dough as far as I can without breaking any of the gluten strands. This dough is incredibly extensible. It feels great. This time, I'm just going to roll it up. That's what it looks like after 90 minutes. Waiting for it. This is very, very sticky dough at this point, so shaping will be an issue. You can see how it's sticking to the bench. Barely going to be able to roll it. This is a very difficult dough to work with. I've had worse just recently with the Tritordium flour baguettes, but this was quite tacky. A bit of a challenge to shape, as you can see. It didn't get any easier. I guess it got a little easier across the 4 baguettes that I shaped, but it wasn't a delightful experience. Now here I am. I'm trying to remove the baguettes from a very heavily floured couche, and you can see how the moisture and tackiness is having them stick. It actually wasn't too bad scoring them in terms of the actual scoring, but by the time that I was done, it seemed as though these were not going to open well. I just had that feeling this was not going to be a good bake, and I wasn't, in that sense, I wasn't disappointed. So here are the 4 baguettes, and what we'll see in a minute is how they looked upon emerging from the oven. My post-bake analysis and notes. Most of the time, I work within the mid-60s hydrations to low 70s hydrations. The majority of my baking happens to be baguettes. I've worked in the low 70s to the mid-70s range and still within my comfort zone. So 73% hydration dose should not have been a problem. 4 to 73% hydration dosage. This, with its very low percent of pre-fermented flour, 4%. The bulk rise yields a somewhat billowy dough with a luxurious feel to it. It was really beautiful to work with. However, post-retard, I found the dough to exhibit both a denseness and tacky feel versus the dough that first went into retard. It was a significant difference to the feel of the dough. As shown in the shaping segment, it was a surprisingly difficult dough to shape after only a short 10-minute rest. I probably should have given it 30, and I did on the second run. Even with, indefinitely for me, copious amounts of flour on the workbench, and especially on the couche, the dough was uncommonly reluctant to release from the couche. It was difficult. I also found scoring to be a bit of a challenge, whereas most of the time, by far, it is never an issue with me. My scoring is pretty darn good. All things considered, I was surprised at how well, and that's in quotes, how well the scores did wind up opening. But the baguettes are disappointingly flat, with little loft, and while they have a lovely coloration, they didn't assume a richer, deeper brown color that I particularly happen to like. The crumb for such a flat loaf is surprisingly open where it isn't dense. The crumb is creamy colored and sweet. The crust is thin with a crisp snap to it. It definitely is a delicious bread. There's no question about that. It's a delight. I baked it for 13 minutes with steam, continue with 13 minutes without steam after rotating the loaves, and 3 minutes more of venting. The next run should yield a better result, and indeed it did. Even before this bread came out of retard for baking, I decided to do another run. I dropped the hydration from 73% to 70, as you can see. Everything before that's the same in terms of the bulk ferment, and so here I am shaping the baguettes. Now these are 3% lower hydration, but for some reason, maybe it's just the experience of working with this dough, it was a lot easier to deal with the second time around. You can see it's not sticking to the bench, although there still is way too much flour on the workbench for my liking, and still, again, on the couche also. This dough sheds a lot of moisture, and it still was somewhat tacky, but much better to deal with. I'd also left the dough out for 30 minutes between pre-shaping and shaping, and I think that helped somewhat, and I may continue doing that in the future instead of my standard 10-minute time frame between pre-shape and shape. So all in all, this was a much better shaping experience than the first, no question about it. Very comfortable dough to work with this time around. I've worked with more comfortable doughs, but this one on the second run was actually pretty easy to deal with, especially compared to the first. You'll notice that my shaping routine is different than most people's, probably almost everybody else's way of shaping, something I've kind of developed on my own over time. I've never quite understood the fuss about taking and doing a fold, such as I'm doing now, then flipping the dough over and doing another fold, and then continuing and sticking your thumb in the middle. It may work great for some people, it may even work better for me, but this is my method and I'm kind of happy with it. When it came time to take the dough out for actually baking, and now they're shaped, you can see how easy it is to remove them from the couche. There was actually no sticking this time at all. Again, the couche is heavily floured, not quite as much as the first time, but they released quite easily. And here I am scoring them. Scoring also was a little easier this time. And so I feel that pretty much everything about this bake, from the time that I did the divide and pre-shape up until this moment when I'm scoring, was a significantly better experience than the prior day. And here's what it looked like with the scores. After 13 minutes, I released the steam, removed the parchment paper and turned them around. That's what we're seeing there. This is the finished product. Overall, a significant improvement over the prior day, quite a difference. These look great compared to the previous days. I'm quite happy with them. And looking on the inside, a very creamy interior, nice and lacy, different kind of laciness that I've seen with other people's, particularly Maurizio's. The creamy color reminds me almost of a semolina. Now, this is Alfonso's bake of Maurizio Leo from theperfectloaf.com, his Levain baguettes.